Happy Tuesday. Let's line up here. Come on, let's get some guys on here. Can you hear me good? Hey, Dave. Got some tech talk I want to talk to you about today. I'll get right to it at 6 o'clock. Hey, Larry, David. Jim Bob. Hey, Randall. I see a few people lining up. James. John. Hey, John. I see some Florida people in the house. I see Tennessee in the house. I see where we got. We got Dwayne, and we got Ohio, we got Ron, man, we got Illinois in the house. Jim Bob, hey, GB again. Let's see, Brock. Hey, Brock. Man, you must be bored. Brock's watching. Hey, Flacco. How y'all doing, man? It's great to see y'all on here. It's great to have people interested and for us to be able to share our passion and talk about the things we love and what we want to know about and what we love learning about. Lee, John, again, David, how y'all doing? Freddie, long time no see, Freddie. Tony, it's good seeing some good names on here, some old friends and some new friends, and Brock's cracking me up. David Cartwright, man, that's an old school fella back from mine and Brock's day. Kendra and Steve from Florida, Lee Hall. Yeah, good seeing you guys, man. Scary times out here. Ricky and Larry and Brad, yeah. But you know what's hasn't waned at all is our need for speed, our performance gains, our interest in how to go fast and why engines do what they do and why we do what we do compared to others. And normal deal, let's see, yep, 6 o'clock now, it looks like. Our normal disclaimer here, I want you guys to know, Vicky and James and Lonnie and Frankie, all you guys, I just want y'all to know that this is my opinion, and I know I say it every week, and I'm not trying to disprove anybody's anything. I've been doing this since the good Lord had me trying to figure out why the lawnmower cranked up. And I took it all apart and my daddy gave me a good whipping for taking the lawnmower apart, and the grass needed cutting. And he said, if you can take the lawnmower apart, at least you can do is cut the yard. So I learned a lot. Hey, Bobby, Brian, Matt, I learned a lot over my years growing up, started working on engines, and I was fortunate enough to have a great opportunity to work on them all the time. So since I think it was about 1978, it's been a full-time job for me only on engines and how to go faster and how to make more power and find some more performance, more efficiency. So there's some smart folks that have been in my life, that have been in my career, that have helped me learn a lot and helped me retain some of the knowledge. So I just want you guys to know before I start that these opinions are mine only, okay? And there's a few people, hi Bridget and Brian, there's a few people, Vicky, that agree with me, and there's some that disagree with me, but I just want you to know that I am so cool if you disagree with me. I am so cool with that. So don't watch this expecting me to start any kind of a contest, because I have no contest here. This is just information that I feel like I know, and I'm going to tell you what I think I know about this information. So having said that, I got several things. I want to talk about port size. I want to talk about cam timing and how to use that to our advantage. And I want to also talk about if you're looking for more low-end power or more top-end power. And me and Brock and the dyno guys, we talk about the left side of the dyno sheet and the right side of the dyno sheet. And it's interesting, in the Harley world, it makes us different from the rest. But if you look here, let's see if the words are right. Does that turn around the right way? Hey, we got too many people's names on here for me to see. Let's see. Okay, you're mad at me. I'm mad at you. Okay, be mad at me. Dave Hall, Steve Gold. Hey, David. But anyway, like this right here. Okay, yeah, you can read it the right way. I think it's turned the right way. Here's what's interesting about the Harley business. And I was telling a friend of mine yesterday that all dyno sheets, horsepower and torque, all cross. Oops. Right here, 52, all. Okay. The torque and the horsepower will be the exact same number at 5,200 and 52 RPM on all dyno sheets. Even this one. Now, what's interesting about this, you guys, I'm going to show you. Here it is right here. 52, 52, it's got the same horsepower and torque. 52, 52, it's got the same horsepower and torque. That's why they cross here. That's why these dyno sheets cross right here. Why is that important? Well, in my career, racing all these engines back in the Kawasaki and Suzuki days, working on hot rod 4-cylinder inline fours, we had nothing that turned 5,000 RPM. Nothing was 5,200 and 52. A good KZ was a 9,000, 10,000 RPM engine, and a good GS 1100, 1150 was a 10,000, 11,000 RPM engine. And so we never knew where the cross was. It was so far away from where we were running, just like this dyno sheet here. See how much torque this engine has? And it only has this much horsepower. This is fun at 3,500, 3,000, 2,500, 2,000. Having this much torque is fun, but that's not how you go fast. It's fun. How you go fast is turn RPM. And when you turn RPM and you go past 5,200 RPM, your horsepower is going to start to get bigger than your torque. And eventually the horsepower will outrun the torque, and we will use that as our advantage. A couple things I want to tell you about that. If you want to ride around at 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 RPM like most cars, most trucks, most Harley Davidsons, and all the touring low RPM engines, they all operate below 5,000 RPM. That's their fun. I mean, their sweet spot. Say, like a stock Harley Davidson has a rev limiter set at 5,000, 5,700, somewhere in that range. And if you want to go faster than that, we've got to go beyond that. Now, if you need more torque, which means, in my opinion, you need low RPM. You need lower RPM. You need to add the power before the 5,200. That means, in my opinion, you should add cubic inches, because cubic inches gives you free low end power. In other words, if you take a 100 cubic inch engine and you make it a 124, bang, there's 25 foot-pounds. Just bang, 25 foot-pounds. It comes with the cubic inches. So if you want a bigger engine, remember you get cubic inches. Now, you get torque if you get cubic inches. And if I start getting tongue-tied, it's because I'm trying to read some of these awesome comments while I'm trying to talk, and my brain doesn't process information that well. So I'm gonna try and stick to my story and read your words later. But back to the deal, RPM is the key. Cubic inches to make low end power, RPM to make top end power. If you want to drive around town and 3,000, 4,000 RPM, that's the range we ride our Harleys in. That's where we ride. That's where our trucks and cars operate, in that range. And it's so important to spend our time in that zone, in that sweet spot. That's where we drive. That's where we operate. If you want to go fast, if you want to go quicker at the drag strip, we got to go way over here. We got to go way on the other side of the dyno sheet. And I'm going to give you a good example. All racing organizations are RPM limited, all. Now, if you have some that aren't, they will be eventually. If you're normally aspirated and they don't have any you can't have any power adders, you can't have, it's like Pro Stock car. They got a 10,500 RPM rev limiter now. NASCAR has a rev limiter. They got different ones for different tracks. IndyCar has a rev limiter. F1 has a rev limiter. Top Fuel and Funny Car now have rev limiters. They're not going to, you can't go faster, but listen to me, if you're not hitting the rev limiter at the finish line, you are leaving performance on the table. Now, a Harley with no wheelie bars, or a Busa with no bars, or a Zix 14 with no bars, we can't always go to the rev limiter in top of high gear because they'll turn over backwards. Short wheelbase is a whole different story. Now, if you're just going to say all out acceleration where you're not spinning the back tire and you're not doing wheelies, you're going to want to use all the gears and all the RPM at your disposal to go fast. I'm going to try and let this make some sense to you. This is a dyno sheet, and this is a stock 103 with some pipes, okay? Can you see this? This is the horsepower curve, and this is the torque curve, okay? It makes peak torque down here at 3,500, which is kind of in the middle of where we drive our bikes on the street. All right. That's a whopping 99 foot-pounds, okay? 99 foot-pounds. Now, if you want to put a Thrasher kit in it, you take that 103 and you put a 107 kit in it, and you put better heads, better cams, better pipe, and you trap more air, okay? We can make more torque. Now look at the shape of this torque curve and horsepower curve. Torque curve, horsepower curve. Now look where this peak torque is. This peak torque is up about 4,500, somewhere in that range. I don't know if you can see that. I'm trying to read through the paper. And if you want to go really, really fast, you rev it up over here to 6,500 where you're making some more horsepower, and it comes back to 5,000, so you rip through here when you're going through the gears. So if you're rolling off with your buddies and you take off in second gear and you rip into it and you shift here, fall back here, shift here, fall back here, shift here, fall back here, this peak torque never makes the scene. It never gets to be part of it. But driving around and accelerating up, you need this low end torque. Now, if you want some more torque, we put a crate motor. We buy a brand new S&S engine in the box, okay? Here's one. I think it was a 103 with pipes. Took it out and put in a crate 124. Now look at it. It's got, what do we do now? We got 141 foot-pounds. All we did was add cubic inches and trap more air. More air in, trap it, make power, turn it into energy, and then send it out the exhaust pipe. But here again, you can see that the torque curve is bigger than the horsepower. Right here, we got peak torque here at 4,000. It's really nice right in here. And if you were to rev it up, you can see that we're starting to nose over at 6,000 because the engine is bigger than the systems bolted to the engine. The engine is bigger than the cam timing. The cubic inches are bigger, but look at the torque it gives you down low. Now, that's what most of us want and feel, because when we're driving, we feel that torque. When we go, one, we feel the torque because we're down low RPM. But if you want to go fast, this is Bagzilla. This is a 135. It has a lot of RPM potential. It has a lot of trapping power. And if you look at it, we're turning this one 7,500 RPM, okay? And we shift it at 6,000. So when I run this down the track through 5 gears, I never go under 180 horsepower. Look at that. 180 at the bottom of the shift, 190, 180 at the top of the shift. And look how much, and look where the torque peak is. The torque peak is down here at 5,500. This is application specific, y'all. Application specific. If you wanted to outrun this red motorcycle with this 135 in it, you need to forget about your torque, because look where it is. Now go like this. Well, George, look how much torque it has. Oh my gosh, look at it. It has 161 foot-pounds. That's a lot of torque. Yes, it's got a lot of cubic inches too. It's 135 cubic inches. But please understand, we're never going to see peak torque. We're going to be past peak torque. When I shift this bike at 7,000, where am I shifting it? Shifting here at 7,500, and it comes back to 6,000. At 6,000, we're already nosed over on our torque. It's already going down. So if you were using your torque, you would shift in here if you were using torque. But I would be outrunning you 10 bikes in every gear. 10 bike lengths in every gear, okay? Yeah, you're right, man. Fill in those cylinders. So why does it make more power revved up that high? Well, we're doing more work in the same amount of time. We only have so many seconds to go down the track. And we want to use, an F1 car, now I think they're limited to 16 or 17,000 RPM. I know the pro stock motorcycles are running 14,000 with the 4 cylinders, and I know that the V-twins are running 10.5 to 11,000 with the V-twins. And they all want more RPM, and that's so we can put more gear on the back. And when I say more gear, that means that we can run, if we're going to operate at high RPM, we're going to change the gearing to where we get more advantage over the tire and over the vehicle. Air pump, thank you, that's right. Hey Gino, hey Wayne. Just think about it. Now, the top fuel cars now, when you see one go 330 or 325 in the 1,000 foot, That's against the limiter. And the reason they're not going faster than that is because they have an imposed rev limiter set in the rules. NHRA is the same way. If you do an in-car camera with Greg Anderson's a good one I see, and Jaggy I see on TV, those guys hit the limiter before the finish line. When they're going down the track, they go right into the limiter. And if they didn't, they've got too small of a sprocket on the back. That's what I say. I know it's not a sprocket, but that's what we say. You need to, and if they could, listen, the year before they changed the rev limiter rules for the 10,500, before they changed that, the rumor is the KB cars were turning 12,000 RPM with those 500 cubic inch engines, and I guess the competitors were thinking that everybody getting put back to 10.5 would help everybody equalize a little more, and it has. It has. So the cool thing, somebody's asking, how do we run more RPM? Well, you got to have some airflow. You got to have a big enough intake port. You got to have a big enough valve. You got to have a big enough throttle body. You got to have a big enough manifold. You got to have the camshaft where the intake valve is closing at the right time. You got to have enough lift for it to get in there. And it gets really, really complicated when we start going beyond those simple terms that we use in camshaft timing. I'm going to say that a fellow asked me today, he said, I was told that a guy made my cylinder heads better by filling in the ports with epoxy and welding up my heads to make them smaller, and on the flow bench it picked up 20 CFM. That's good. I'm not trying to discredit this. I'm just going to tell you that I never got a flow bench trophy. Never got a dyno trophy. Well, yes, I have. I got lots of dyno trophies when they do dyno shootouts, but I still hadn't seen maybe they do have flow bench shootouts. Is a flow bench a good tool? Yes. So is a set of scales for your bathroom and for you to measure engine parts and to see how much you weigh and to buy meat. we want to buy pounds, and we want to buy heads by airflow. Hey, Mike, Steve, Thomas, Wayne, I see you guys. Thank you all so much for watching. The flow bench is a great tool. Yes, it is. But we have not had valves too big in any engine we have ever built. I've never run a motorcycle or car engine down the racetrack and say, darn, just think if we had put smaller valves in it. I've never said that in my life. I've never gone down the track and say, I wish my head flowed less air. Never said that either. And there's some really smart people on here, man. They know what I'm talking about. And we don't all agree. We don't all agree. So I'm telling you, I'm speaking as these are gospel truths, but they are as I know it. So let's say your head flows too much. Well, if your head flows too much, how do you know it flows too much? It's because the flow bench says it flows too much? Mm-mm. Because the dyno says it flows too much? Mm-mm. Why does it flow too much? You got a head that flows too much. My girlfriend weighs 300 pounds and I weigh 200. You need a medal, dude, if you're going to ride her on your shoulders on the motorcycle. I don't even know why I read that. There's some things a man can't unsee. Anyway, if your flow bench says you flow too much, or if your dyno says that you flow too much, that's not true. Something's telling you it flows too much, and it might be the guy that's the new guy working on your head, the new guy that's working on your engine. Maybe that's the guy that says it flows too much. Don't know that. If it goes slower, it still doesn't mean the head flows too much. It means something's wrong, and it's not because it flows too much. It's because, my opinion, the camshaft's too big. And please listen to my definition of a camshaft that's too big. I'm not talking about lift, not how far the valve opens. I'm talking about how long the valve stays open. Yep, close. It opens. Flow, close. Okay, if you have a head that's really big and it flows a lot of air and you've got a long duration cam, you're going to open the valve too soon. It's really slow flow. Then the piston goes down. Now it's speeding up the flow going in the engine. And then the piston comes up and the valve stays open too long and it pushes all that back out. So now you got a bunch of in and out going on with the airflow and the valve's opening and closing too long. Yes, it's called duration. Now the duration though, on our V8 car engines and our Milwaukee 8s and our old single overhead cams and our old Evos have all the lobes on one shaft. Okay, so people put degree keys and degree gears, and they advance the cam and they retard the cam. And when they do, they don't realize, some do, but a lot of folks don't understand, when you advance the cam to change one number, the other numbers all change with it. It's not exactly the right way to do it. If you move the cam and you advance the cam 4 degrees to try and obtain something, remember you have made 3 other changes, because you've moved the exhaust opening, the exhaust closing, and the intake opening and the intake closing. You moved 4 things. Which one helped you? Well, hey Cody, Kyle, Walter, if you move the cam 4 degrees, you say, well, I advanced the cam 4 degrees, so I picked up low end power. Or I retarded the cam 4 degrees and I gained top end power. Well, maybe that's what the results were on the dyno, or maybe it showed on the racetrack, but it's not because of one event. It's because of 4 events. There's always, thanks, George. There's 4 events. There is the intake valve opening, there's the intake valve closing, there's the exhaust valve opening, and then there's the exhaust valve closing. And with when we change camshafts at Star Racing Power, we move all the lobes, all the events where we want them. If we got the exhaust right where we want it and we want to advance the intake, we're going to move one thing. We're going to move when the intake valve closes. We're not going to move when the intake valve opens. We're going to not advance the cam, but we're going to shorten the duration and put it back where the opening was to close the intake sooner. That's what we do. I'm sorry if you think that moving the cam advances the cam fixes all the events. It doesn't. It changes all 4 of them, but if it helps you make more power, you had the wrong cam to start with. It's just like a friend of mine told me yesterday. He said, I loosened up my lash really, really big on my engine, and I picked up 15 horsepower. And this was on a little engine. And I'm going to tell you something. He said it. He was right. He didn't need to change his lash. He needed to change his events. He needed to change his events. The trend is going over the years from 40 years ago to now. The duration on good flowing heads is getting smaller and smaller. The introduction of the 4-valve engines back in 1980, 79, when we started working on the old 4-valve inline, Kayla and George, I see some people on here that are just looking because they know me, not because of what they want to hear. Thank y'all for that. I am trying to talk about these passions I have about cam timing and engines. And I wanted to share with you that if you, the moving the lash, okay, that changed 2 events on that intake cam. It wasn't one that had 4, it wasn't all the exhaust, it wasn't all of them, it was just the intake. And he put a bunch of lash on the intake and it picked up 20 horse. And what it did for him is it changed the opening number and it changed the closing number. And it did decrease the effective duration. You're right, Brock. See, there's a lot of people on here that know exactly what I'm talking about, but a lot of times we need to revisit the basics because we get so wrapped up going down the road that I know not to touch my face. I'm sorry, y'all. My eye itches, my nose itches, my lips itch. I got a mustache. I'm trying not to touch my face. Anyway, I wash my hands really good, and I'm using wipes, and I've got this place sanitized pretty good right here. And I'm going to drink some more water. But back to the lash. When you change your lash and it changes your power, you've got a wrong cam, or you need a different cam. So as we increase power, like I said, going back, the 4-valve came up back in the day. 1980, we went from the 2-valve engine to the 4-valve engine. And the first thing we noticed was how small the camshaft needed to be, lift and duration, because we're trapping more air in less time. And that's the whole key of our air pump, the engine, is we want to trap air. Because if you had nitrous oxide kit, a power adder, you would be putting more oxygen and fuel in, and you would be trapping it with the same camshaft you had before you spray it. If you put a turbo in it, you're stuffing more air and fuel in the engine, and you're trapping it with the same camshaft, so you're making more power. If you have a supercharger on it, and we all leave the same camshaft every time, if we have the same camshaft, normally aspirated, and we put a supercharger on it, you're going to make a lot more power because you're trapping more air. And how do you take advantage of that supercharger? Well, you need to change all 4 vents. You're going to need to change when it opens, when it closes, when the exhaust opens, when it closes. You're going to need to change those 4 vents in order to take advantage of that supercharger. But it is a guaranteed bolt-on to take a normally aspirated stock engine and bolt a supercharger on it. A normally aspirated turbocharged engine and bolt a turbo on it. A normally aspirated engine and put a nitrous kit on it. All of those adders will absolutely make more power only because we're increasing cylinder pressure and we're increasing the trapping capabilities. Now, let's go back to normally aspirated like Pro Stock car, and these Harleys, these dyno sheets right here. All of these are normally aspirated. I don't really work on supercharged or turbocharged Harleys. I do some nitrous kits on Harleys because that's a good way to add cubic inches without making a whole bunch of changes to your engine. So I'm a fan of that if you can control it, because nitrous oxide is a controlled supercharger. It's a chemical supercharger, sorry, and we have to control the chemicals in order to make sure that we don't tear up our parts and use it to our advantage. And you always want to add it when the piston's already moving, it's already going down. That's when you want to put the power to it. You never want to put the power to it when the piston's parked. Even at 10,000 RPM, you guys, your piston stops. And if you power down right there, you're going to push a bunch of stuff. The heads go off, the push rods, the gaskets, head gaskets, pistons, something's going to tear up. So you want to catch that piston going down, all right? I know that I've kind of stumbled along here a little bit, but the key to this deal is if we can trap more air, and the way we do it with these normally aspirated engines and with Pro Stock and these Harleys, these street Harleys, and these racing Harleys, is we get more air in at the right time, we close the valve at the right time, we light it with the spark at the right time, and we put the power to it with the crankshaft and the piston and the rod in the right place, and we rotate it into so much rotation and power. Before I go, I'm going to list my events in my order, okay? My most important event to me is my intake closing. That's just me. I'm not telling you the world. That's just me. The intake closing is the most important, but the next most important to me is when the exhaust opens, okay? That's second for me. The third most important for me is when the intake valve opens and when the exhaust valve closes. Those are the 4. I like intake close, exhaust open, intake open, and exhaust close. And it's not exactly fair to share all this out there because it confuses everybody, but it's just from experience now doing this every day for a job. Like my day job is to figure out how to make this go fast. And there's a lot of guys I compete with and a lot of guys I race with that have to service motorcycles, they have to change oil, they have to put tires on, they have to do dyno tuning all the time, or there's hardly anybody doing real engine development. I mean, there are some awesome companies out there that their day job is to develop more power, and I'm taking advantage of that because that's what we get paid to do now, and we're very fortunate to have clients that want to be on the leading edge. They want what's been proven. They don't want a real experiment. They want something that's already been proven, that's already been done, it already proves reliable. And that's like our Thrasher kits now, even today, over time, probably in the last 10 years, we've got probably 250 of them in service today that are still doing awesome. And it's from experience and learning, because when we first started the Thrasher kits, I put a picture on my Facebook page today. I think it was my cover photo, or I don't remember what it's called, but it was a picture of me on an old dyno with Julie on the back when she was a baby, and that was our first Thrasher kit, and we made 100 horsepower, and those bikes were making 60 or 70. So we started a little niche business there at about 100 horsepower Harleys, and that was a big deal back in the day. And now that same Thrasher kit, we're making 130 horsepower out of those now. So the little engines are still in the 120s, but the 107s are making 130 horsepower, and the 113s that we put in the Screaming Eagle 110s are making 140 horsepower. Also, the Milwaukee 8s. This is the future. We've been working on them now for 3 or 4 years, and we have Thrasher 2, Thrasher 3, Thrasher 4, and we have just posted those on the website, I think, today. And we broke down these 3 new kits, the Thrasher 2, the Thrasher 3, and the Thrasher 4. And they are available in different cubic inches and different configurations where you can actually buy this turnkey, where you can go 135 to 140 horsepower, and everything works like stock on a 90 or 80 or 80 or 90 horsepower Milwaukee 8. We have them all the way up to the 133 and the 137 kits that are still streetable, and they make a lot of horsepower, and the gasoline is the limit, which is a tech talk another day. I'm out of time. Also, thank you guys for watching. Remember, the RPM, build the engine to run in the zone you want to run in. And there is 4 different dyno sheets here that show you the range that you would want to run in. You want to ride around in town or on the highway at 3,000, 4,000 RPM. You need to build specific goals to go there. If you want to outrun everybody at the drag strip or going through the gears, you need to really work on the horsepower end and let the torque fall away. If you saw a dyno sheet on a pro stock engine, you would be surprised. I'm going to draw one right quick. The horsepower goes like that and the torque goes like this. They don't cross. They cross on the other end of the page. They cross at 5,252. We're working at Star Racing Power. We are working every day. We are very limited. We don't communicate with anybody other than social media or internet. We deal with very little telephone. If you guys get frustrated trying to call, I'm really sorry. We are trying really hard to contain the virus that everybody has to deal with all over the world. This ain't just where we are, y'all. It's all over the world. And we wrote it off. We pretended like it wasn't happening, but it is happening because there are people dying here. And I want to tell you, I made a note here to explain this. Listen to you guys. That virus does not move around. Only we move it around. People move it around. So if we don't move around, it doesn't move around. And it does have a time limit. It will peter out if we quit spreading it. The more we spread it, the faster it grows. And I love the idea of us working where we are and working on what we're working on. If you come to the shop, I cannot visit with you. I cannot give you a tour. It is not because I don't love you. It's not because I don't want to see you. It's because we are doing our part to lower the curve by stopping the spread. We're going to flatten the curve. And we have to do our part because we have old people in our life. Jackie Bryce, my longtime partner and wife and best friend, she's the primary caregiver for her parents. They're 90 years old, and it will jump on them like a hawk on a June bug, as they say down south. God bless y'all. I love y'all. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm going to keep doing this because you guys are being good about it, and y'all are thankful for it, and y'all ask me questions, and it makes me feel like sharing more. So thank y'all. May God bless. And y'all have a good night and take care of each other. Good night.